Okay, hello. Today we have a special event where I am joined by two fantastic guests. I'm going to introduce them. The first guest that we have today is Scott Teplin. He is an artist who is living and working in Brooklyn, New York. He does commercial and gallery pieces of artwork, and he also does animation using After Effects. And we are also being joined by PeterDraws, known as PeterDraws. He's been drawing for a long time, everything from mandalas to spaceships to abstract doodles. He also does paintings and sculptures and ceramic, and I would argue a bit of performance as well. So thank you very much both for joining me. I really looking forward to this conversation. And if I can start off, I would ask, what tools do you consider to be good quality? Because all of your artwork is always very technical and very specific and very precise. So what would you consider to be a good quality tool? Or if not good quality, then is there a tool which has changed the way that you work?
You want to start, Peter?
Sure. I mean, it is an interesting question to me because there are, I've gotten into things like fountain pens recently, like just like randomly like reviewing them. Like lots of times I just like buy them, and sometimes I have so many of them now that I only use them once sometimes, just because I buy them for a video and review them, and then I'm on to the next one, which is kind of wasteful now that I think of it. But sometimes they're not a good pen and it's not a good tool like you're asking. But sometimes even sometimes it's a very well-made pen, or it's a well-made tool, but it's not good for drawing with. It's not good for using. I think it's partly because if there's anything about the tool that seems to distract me at all or take away from the process, like tools are just supposed to be like an extension of us for drawing. And if there's any like interference at all, then I'm less likely to use that pen. So it could be like a really nice pen made out of like the nicest steel or bronze or anything, but I could be, it could be like hundreds of dollars, but I could be way more likely to go back to like a very cheap, $1 pen, just because it just works better, right? I have to think about it less, and I can just think about the drawing itself. So I guess, it comes down to functionality. And so, sometimes it's nice to have a fancy tool that feels nice in your hand or feels nice in your pocket and is nice to show to people, but that's not what it comes down to ultimately. That's what came to my mind.
I would say in terms of pens, I use different media to work with, brushes too, but in terms of pens, I go with what's most functional. I kind of had this, how sometimes when something happens at a certain age, it gets stuck in your brain and you can't really get that out of your brain. When I was sort of just starting to learn about art as an undergrad in college, I think one of my professors, it might have been a printmaking professor, was very vigilant about pigments and archival quality and fade proof stuff. And I have a hard time shaking that. And so that's one reason I tend, and it's ridiculous because everything I make isn't precious and doesn't have to last 2,000 years. I know that. I'm not Da Vinci, but I still have that in my brain sometimes. And I gravitate toward pigmented inks instead of hues. Most fountain pen inks aren't pigmented, they're dyes. And that's why they don't get stuck in the pen and they flow through the pen and you can wash them out with water. And I do use fountain pens sometimes, to just write stuff with. I don't know what that is. Maybe Peter knows. I got it on jet pens, like a nice steel one. But I tend to use pens that aren't going to fade over time, like the inks that aren't going to fade over time. And part of that goes with that I watercolor over my work. And if you use a dye, which is usually a fountain pen or something like that, which are sometimes much nicer to draw with, the water will reactivate the ink and you won't be able to watercolor over it so well. Another thing that really important to me is like I obsess over a line, and like I feel that most lines have two sides to them. There's, you know what I mean? Like if you blew up a line really large, you can have a jagged edge and like a smooth edge. And I generally draw, like I use, I use this a lot. This is a Gillette 290 nib, and it has such a tiny fine line. But if you look up, like if you would look with a magnifying glass, you would know that if you draw with it, you can never, like with these dip pens, you have to pull, you can't push because this needle edge is so sharp, it'll get stuck in the paper and it'll bend. When you're doing that, you get a sort of a jagged edge on one side of the line and a smooth edge on the other side. And I draw lightly with this pen, and then I thicken it on one side, and then I have to turn the paper around and I thicken it with the other side so that you get a smooth edge on both sides. So it feels better. And by doing that, I think it adds a warmth to the line. It's not like an Illustrator stroke where everything is generally one width. It's like uneven, but close enough that you get the idea of what you're trying to give weight to in an object or whatever like that. So those are some of the things I think about a lot. And in terms of why I use what I use different nibs for different reasons. Sometimes if I want to make a really thick line, I'll start with this and I'll slowly keep redrawing and get it thicker and thicker with different nibs that have wider, I don't know, what's it called? The edge of the nib. Peter, do you know what that's called? I don't know.
Are you saying you draw every line at least twice?
Usually, yeah, just about at least twice, sometimes much more than that. Like this big guy behind me, you can't really see that well. Some of those lines are like 6-7 times just to keep getting it thicker and thicker, because you step back and you're like, actually that weight could be a little bit thicker. So you let it dry and then you go over it again.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. A lot of it is kind of just like the habits you formed over the years inform a lot of your decisions for what tools and the process you approach. Like there could be a different, maybe, I don't even want to say a better way, but just a different way to do it that could work also. But it's just drawing, and just do it and enjoy it, I think. And if it looks cool to you and you're having a good time, I think you'll find some tool that'll work. Yeah.
I agree with that for the most part, but some of the stuff I do is so not enjoyable that I can't always say that. Like my favorite thing is to draw in a sketchbook. That's the most enjoyable time I ever have. But that's where things incubate. That's where the inventions kind of happen. And then if I want to make an artwork, it's somewhat torturous because you have to work on the same thing for a month or a year. And you just don't want to do it anymore. Like I don't know. I can't always, like, do you always, like, if you're not happy making something, do you just go on to something else, or do you suffer through it?
I stop.
You stop. Okay.
Yeah. You don't consider the stuff in your sketchbook art?
Yeah, sure. But that's interesting. It's funny. We're coming from this at different angles. I think my default is showing the artwork in a gallery type setting.
Yeah.
And I don't do that with my sketchbooks. And yeah, I guess that's what I'm thinking about.
Yeah, I think I just never, like all the years of drawing I never really understood galleries or had any exposure to them or ever imagined that I could ever be in them. So it was just like, I like drawing sketchbooks and that's all it'll ever be for me. So that was just where my mind was at. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's like understanding the universe. Like it's so vast and, well, obnoxious. I wouldn't say the universe is obnoxious, but it's like impossible. It's impossible to get a handle on, and it changes all the time. Like I go in and out of the gallery world every few years, so I can understand that. Yeah.
Well, curiously, didn't you in our last conversation, Scott, didn't you tell me about a group who exhibit sketchbooks and are sketchbook artists that exhibit the whole sketchbook? Do you remember that? And you
Yeah, there's
said
like
you're part of the
isn't there
group?
like a sketchbook gallery in Brooklyn or something?
Sketchbook
Yeah.
gallery, yeah.
Yeah, and I think they travel with it too. They have like a bookmobile or something. They travel with it or something.
Mm.
Yeah. I mean, there are ways, I think I was mentioning before, there are ways to show a sketchbook now that you couldn't have done 4 or 5 years ago with super high res, 8K screens that are touch, and then someone in a gallery can digitally go through it, but it's still not the same.
No, yeah.
And the other thing about a book, I do a lot of artist books too. One of a kind piece of art, which is a book. And the thing you get from an artist book that you don't get with sculpture or painting or drawing is you're supposed to touch it, and you're become at one with the piece. Like, you control how quickly you do things. You go back and forth, and just touching it is a whole other sense that you don't typically get in like an art display setting, gallery or museum or something. So
Yeah.
I mean, you can do that, but your book will fall apart over time and get dirty. And do you want to risk that? I don't know.
Yeah, I've always struggled with that too. Like, just thought of all the oils from people's hands getting on the pages and stuff. Even though I want them to look at it and flip through it, but I don't know.
Yeah, I know what you mean. One solution is to have a pair of gloves, just set them next to the, and then people tend to they'll be good about it, but it's also a risk. I don't know. I don't sell my sketchbooks, so I have less of a reason to show them in like a gallery or something like that.
How important is it for you to be playful or silly with your artwork and your practice? How does it help the creativity to be, kind of playful in that practice?
I think it's important to me in the sense that, well, I like to have a good time when I'm drawing. Like, I personally don't like it to feel like a chore. And sometimes in the middle of a drawing, if I feel like I'm getting bogged down and I'm just like, what am I doing? I'm not enjoying this drawing. I, take a little break and I come back to them like, all right, if I'm not enjoying this, what can I do so I am enjoying it and I do have fun with it? And like that little fresh insight that I try to give myself, it does usually help, because since like I mentioned before, since I'm not usually trying to draw something specific, like it's pretty easy to change the direction of my drawings and have fun with it again.
Yeah, I like to have, well, I have different phases of drawing. Like, I have the production work phase where it's not playful to me, it's just work. And I get satisfaction out of seeing it finished, like these drawings aren't going to draw themselves. So you just got to put that in. But the playfulness for me comes in the sketchbook, where I like to do silly, embarrassing stuff a lot of the times, that makes me laugh. And I'll sometimes just show stuff to my friends, but I sometimes, like, if I post something on Instagram, if I'm hesitant because it's so embarrassing, that's when I feel like I should do it the most.
Yeah.
And I'm not worried about getting in. Well, I'm a little worried. I don't want to get in trouble. I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. Like, that's the thing. Like, I don't want to make anyone feel bad, but I think it's funny to be embarrassed sometimes, and I do that to myself. Anyway, I don't know why I'm getting so bogged down with embarrassment. It's not all about embarrassment. It's just like funny stuff. Like, my friends are all funny. I get tons of inspiration from comedians, and like Peter said, like, I want to enjoy it. So that's why I keep doing it. I designed my sketchbooks to want to be worked in. They feel really good. The paper's nice. The leather's nice. And it invites me to always have it and work in it. And getting pleasure out of being funny and laughing at what you do is a huge part of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now that you mention it, there are parts of my drawing sometimes that feel a little more like work. Like if I'm like filling some like huge area with like some tiny texture that I have to repeat over and over again, or stippling or something. And those parts don't feel as playful. Probably goes more in like it's just like, maybe it feels more like work, but it's also very satisfying. Maybe while I'm doing it, it's a bit of a grind. It's also satisfying, but I know when I'm done, I'm looking forward to that finished result. I know it's going to be amazing. So it's not always playful now that I think about it a little more, but that element is still there in the back of my head, I guess. Like, I know I'm not like, it's not like a straight up chore either, you know.
But do you ever, I wonder, I mean, you put out so much great content. I mean, me and my kids all really enjoy watching your videos, but you do a lot of them. So I wonder, do you sometimes feel like you have to do it? Like, it's like, that's got to be work for you to a certain extent, right? I mean, I know you enjoy drawing, but that's got to be a part of work.
Oh yeah, definitely, especially since like lately I've been in school, and a lot of the videos I've put out have been like I have these contracts for like sponsored videos and stuff. I have to like put out like a couple per month. Lately, it has started to feel like a bit of a work, or a bit of a slog in that respect. So like this semester, I'm not taking any classes. So I'm like, I do like, that is a priority for me to try to get back into that like playful feeling of just like making videos, because I'm having fun with it, because that is a feeling that I used to have more, you know, not just with drawing, but like the whole video making process. And I feel like that is reflected in the finished product of the videos when someone is having a good time making them, or just like, oh yeah, I have or if it feels like homework, you know, like something that's due.
Can I ask you a weird question?
Sure.
Do you have fans at school who like groupies who like, oh, it's Draws?
Yeah, kind of some of them.
Oh, that's awesome.
It's not too bad, but sometimes people I don't even know are like, yeah, I watch you on YouTube, or
That's fun.
Yeah. It's not too cringy. It's fun. It's all good natured.
Yeah, your channel is so wholesome too that like everyone's positive, I would imagine, you know.
Yeah,
you
definitely.
Know, just amazing to me is I get I wouldn't say runoff, but I get some of your followers. I can tell when they follow me, they call themselves something draws. You must see that a lot, right?
Yeah, I don't know how much credit to take for that, but sometimes I definitely saw a rise in people with something draws in their name, and I'm like, was that because of me, or am I being too self-centered? But
no, it's totally you. You don't have to do like a deep Google analytics to figure out where that came from, for me anyway.
I was going to ask, how much do the cameras get in the way of the work? Like, how much is that an inconvenience for either of you?
Well, I can tell you right now, I hate it, because just yesterday I did a huge spill on my drawing because of my stupid camera. I'm really lazy with setup, and I just like clamp a long ruler to the edge of a shelf and rest my phone on it so the camera's just poking off. And I hit that yesterday, and it hit my ink pot, and it spilled like 10 big ink drips all over it, like this one. So it took me 2 hours to scrape the ink off. It can be done if it's decent paper, but yeah, I don't know. What about you, Peter?
I mean, I did used to do the balancing cameras on stuff. I think I used to do like up on the edge of like a stack of textbooks and stuff. But these days I'm pretty used to it. Like I put a lot of work into, getting the cameras set up at a place where they're not in the way, they're not annoying, like getting a desk and a space set up so it's all just ready to go all the time, so I can just start drawing. Because I feel like when that moment hits and I'm ready to draw, I just want to be able to start to draw without any like hindrances. Otherwise, I don't know, sometimes like the moment passes if you have to start like setting up cameras and cleaning the desk and stuff. Maybe I can kind of see it over there a little bit, have like the camera set up over the desk on like this nice horizontal tripod pointing straight down. I mean, it still gets a little weird because you have to think about like, is your hand blocking what you're drawing and stuff like that? Like different pens you hold different ways. So I'll still move the camera off to the side maybe, so it's looking slightly from an angle, stuff like that. But I mean, I think about like, am I rotating the paper too much because I'm going to be speeding up the video later and it might look dizzying, you know, at 100x speed or whatever I do. So there's all that, but I mean, it's not too bad.
You feel that this what we just got a peek of was your drawing space, and it's like a little bit cramped, it looked like. Do you ever feel like you want to work larger but you can't because that's your setup is sort of so that it's easy to film?
Well, it's mostly cramped because it's very cluttered, so I could just,
That's what I mean.
could just push a bunch of clutter off the desk, yeah, and then yeah. Or go, yeah, it's pretty easy to move somewhere else too because it's just like a tripod and some lights.
I get like that too. I end up having so much crap on a surface, I'll just end up going to another area instead of cleaning it up.
Yes, every few months I like switch rooms, just because switching rooms like makes me have a fresh new clean space.
Right.
You have said that you'd like to work bigger though, Peter. Is that something which would take different considerations in order to capture when you're, because you have that set up on your desk and you said that you'd like to, you know, do larger work in the future? That's something which you said about painting being a bit more grand and larger on a scale. Is that something?
I mean, yeah, that is partly why I started to do painting. I mean, painting is just fun and different on its own, but I also like it because it's like, it's usually bigger, you know, you can get like big, I usually use boards instead of canvases, but you can get big canvases, you know, and just can like stand in front of it and it takes up more of your field of view than just so many years I spent just drawing on little pieces of paper. It's just a different viewing experience. But I mean, like you can see like the drawing behind Scott. I mean, he's probably spent so many hours on that, and so many of my pieces I usually draw just in a few sittings, like a few days. And it's partly because of, since I make my money from my videos, like I need to keep putting them out. So that is a little bit annoying to me. Maybe I should do videos of like partial drawings, you know, like processes, like drawing part 1, part 2, part 3 or something. There are probably solutions to that.
And then the ink and then the watercolor. That's
yeah, there's probably good solutions to that, but it's probably also just like what I'm used to, like do a drawing on a printer size sheet of paper. I can pump it out in several hours. Like that's just, it's after so many years, it's just kind of my process, you know. It's hard to switch and do a bigger drawing, and I almost feel like I would feel like lost or stuck in the drawing if I spent too many hours on it. Like if I'm used to spending like 6 to 10 hours on a drawing, sometimes not even that much, I feel like I might feel like I was, I don't know, like overwhelmed if I started spending like 20 or 30 hours on a drawing. Like I'd probably be mentally ready to move on to the next one or something. I don't know, it's weird.
It's funny, you and I have different ideas of being comfortable in our work because you don't want to be uncomfortable, but I tend to think that is a really beneficial place to be, is to be uncomfortable and not know what you're doing. And then like I have an obsession with progress, where like I do these room drawings a lot, but I can't keep doing the same one. So I have to come up with a new idea. Otherwise, I want to figure out a totally super challenging, hard thing to do that I don't really know how to do well. Because I just want to keep learning, like have a tool belt and just keep filling it with different tools. And then, and I think like that was one thing that I learned in art school was not knowing what you're doing, and the uncomfortable can be like undesirable, but beneficial in the long run.
Yeah, I definitely get that. I mean, I definitely don't always know what I'm doing, but I guess my approach to art has so long has just been like a meditative outflowing. approach to art. Like I never really sat down and was like, I want to draw something really difficult. It was just like, I want to draw something that's like, and maybe at the most in the end is interesting to look at. Because I feel like in so many other areas of my life, things are difficult. There's puzzles to solve. And art is like where I can relax. And I don't know. It is interesting to hear you describe that, how it's a different approach.
Yeah. No, I can totally understand what you're saying too.
Scott, if I could go back to ask about, I know I asked earlier about tools, but I just remembered that I'd seen you discuss the difference in quality from the sable brush, was it, that you were discussing on Instagram? Do you mind talking about that a little bit? Because I know you did it on Instagram, but I found it really interesting. Is there anything that you can share about the difference in quality from what you're used to with that, and what happens when you're trying to use it and it's not what you expect?
Yeah, I generally only use, I guess I'll show you what I'm talking about. I used to use almost exclusively these Winsor Newton series, is that upside down? Series 7 sable brushes. And it's a Kolinsky sable, which I believe is from a rodent, some kind of a weasel in Siberia, which is Russia. And they, every once in a while, they will get sanctioned and you won't be able to import any Siberian sable, Kolinsky sable, to Western countries. And this is made in England. So every once in a while, there'll be no more left on the market of these at all. And these used to be the only ones I would use because they would have the best snap. So when you have super amount of control when it's a little bit stiff, yet I don't know if it's oil in the bristles or whatever, but it holds a lot of water at the same time. So I always know how much water and I can get, and it comes to a really fine point. So I can do a lot with this one brush. Like I'll do huge, like 10-foot by 6-foot paintings with one of these or smaller. And some of these, if you take care of them, they can last years, but you can't use ink with them because it will definitely ruin them, just watercolor. The quality's gone down considerably in the last few years, and they don't hold their point anymore. And it's really frustrating when you're trying to get a tiny little area and the point is sort of splitting apart, or the brush only lasts like a week until it starts to split apart. So I've started to go to other brands. I haven't really found, there's this one is supposed to be decent. Piscata, which is it's an Italian, let's see, can you see that?
Yeah.
It's an Italian, Spanish brand. What are my fingers are doing? Yeah, Barcelona, as opposed to English. And I guess I haven't found this to be any better, but they're really expensive. I mean, this is a number 4 brush. This is, gosh, maybe $60 maybe for this little thing. This was maybe $40. It's a number 2. I don't know. I tend to use travel brushes now because they seem to retain their quality. I don't know if it's English or an Italian brand called Da Vinci. I mean, I know Da Vinci was Italian, but I think it might be a Da Vinci
brush. Yeah.
Or maybe it might even be German. Yeah, and those tend to be. Oh, I have a bunch right here. Those they're awesome. It's like I have does it say Germany on them? No. You unscrew them like this. And you can see it on my forehead. The tip is really nice, and I've had this for years and years, and it retains its snap and its point. So I don't know. That's my rant.
Have you got anything which is like that, Peter? Anything which you experienced that's gone worse in quality, or if it doesn't work like you remember it doing?
I didn't know I had $60 brushes, but I should have known. It's not. was only momentarily surprising.
I mean, you get a little bit bigger. These go to like $120 for one of these things.
I mean,
go ahead.
I don't know if I have anything exactly like that. I mean, for a long time, I was struggling with those road tring pens, which I don't think they've gotten worse in quality. They just kind of stayed a weird quality, because I mean, those are like those are from like a past time of like when people were doing drafting by hand. And I mean, they're like a different type of pen technology where it's all metal nib, like a metal thing, and there's like a little wire that comes out of the front. And the main problem I have with those is like the bodies are always made of like this weird rubber that it like dry rots and cracks and they get clogged. And people always tell you about how to clean them out, but it's always some elaborate thing. And I just want a pen that works, and you don't have to spend half your time and your drawing time struggling with the pen itself instead of drawing, I guess. But I just loved when they work so good. I just love the lines they make. It's so satisfying. That was my struggle with them. It's a very love-hate thing. So I bought several packs of these, which were like sometimes like $75 for like 4 of them or something. But sometimes you'd only like one of them would work really good. And that would be like my pen that I would just use for forever. But I don't know. I've kind of, yeah.
Question about those, because I used to use those too. When I worked in an art supply store when they were cheaper.
Yeah.
So I watched a video you did a little while ago on those, and I don't think you mentioned, or maybe there used to be a version of those that had a gem tip.
Oh yeah, I have some of those.
Yeah. So do those actually last longer? Is that a real thing?
Well, I never had a problem with the tips wearing out. That wasn't my issue.
I think what wears them out is drawing on Mylar. It's so satisfying to draw on that surface.
Yeah.
But I think it's like sandpaper for those. I think that's
that's probably why I'd use the gem tip. Yeah.
Oh.
It does. The gem tips do look cool because like this little tiny blue thing instead of a metal wire.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah,
I used to love those.
Sorry, I didn't mean to talk over you. What did you say? Sorry.
I used to love playing with those, but they got too cloggy for me. Do you use India ink in them, or do you use like a different kind of ink?
I mean, I think like the ink that comes with them is a type of India ink. So that's what I was using for a long time. But lately, some people have been like suggesting that you use fountain pen ink, which might clog less.
Yeah,
but also the India ink seems so much like darker and nicer. But maybe it's not worth it. I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's another reason I use India ink. I think there's a quote from Spinal Tap. There's none blacker than India ink. It's so deliciously
so
black.
Nice. Yeah.
And that's why I don't like to use Pigma microns so much, is because it's a little bit gray when you compare India ink. But India ink is such a pain, though.
Yeah, it's a struggle.
Yeah, play is one thing, isn't it? But if you're working as an artist, you need reliable tools, I suppose, and any of these technical problems can really make things more difficult. I mean, a lot of people wonder this, and it might not be that easy to answer, but how do you make money as an artist?
There's a million ways. Do's and don'ts. You want to go first, Peter?
I mean, is it me personally, or I don't know how other people should make money as artists? Because I never set out to make money as an artist. I was just doing it, for fun. And then eventually one day when I was moving and switching jobs, I realized, wait a second, I'm making some money from this. Maybe I could do it full time. Maybe I'll try doing it full time before I get a new job and see if it works. And then it did work. So personally, I kind of make money indirectly from my art. Like I don't actually sell very much of my art. Like I have like 99% of all the art I've ever made still. I feel like like, for example, I have like sponsors in my videos. I feel like they're my modern version of like the Pope sponsoring me to make art or something, like they're my patrons or something, because except they don't tell me what to make. They're just like, hey, make some art and then mention us or something, which is nice. It feels weird sometimes, but I do, being a YouTuber and making art, sometimes there's this weird mental thing like, am I a YouTuber that makes art, or I'm an artist that makes YouTube videos? And I can't really figure out which one it is sometimes, or which one I should prioritize, or maybe it's just both. But I don't know how, if I was going to give advice to other people, I don't know if I would say make YouTube videos so that you can draw art and make money from it, because I don't know if that's a realistic goal, because I don't really know how I did it. It was kind of accidental and lucky. What do you think? What do you think?
Sponsors, did they approach you, or did you ever reach out to sponsors?
It's kind of like a snowball effect. Once you reach a certain point and get enough views on your videos, then people are willing to, put ads on your videos. Before I even got sponsors, you can just monetize your YouTube videos and get some of the ad revenue from YouTube. But then I have like an agency that lines up the sponsors for me. So, because obviously as an artist, I'm not a very good businessman. So I like let them handle it. I'm like, I just want to draw pictures, make videos. Y'all line up the stuff and just send me the paperwork to sign, stuff like that. So, and they have all the connections and they have lawyers and stuff. So I'm just like, y'all figure it out. Y'all take a little cut. It works for me.
Have you had to find something that doesn't work to make money, Peter? Because I want Scott to answer the same questions, but because you've said what does work, have you ever tried to make money without work and you think this actually doesn't work for me?
Like I said, I haven't been very successful with actually selling my art to make work, selling my art to make money, partly because I like my art a lot, and there's only one of each piece. Maybe it would be different if I was like into printmaking or something, but I think I price a lot of my art absurdly high at like price points where most people wouldn't be willing to buy it, because I'm like, I really am like emotionally attached to my art. And so I just think, there are these guidelines that you can look up, like how to price your art. It's like hourly time, materials, et cetera, et cetera. But in my head, I'm just like, I want to keep my art except for whatever this dollar amount is. This is the dollar amount I'd be willing to part with my art for. And it's usually like an insulting number that most people wouldn't be willing to pay. I'm like, fine, maybe. But so that hasn't really worked for me. I don't know what else I've tried. What other ways do artists make money? Like selling at like craft fairs and stuff, like at tables. I've seen people do that. I haven't really tried that.
Well, you license your stuff sometimes, right?
Like, what do you mean?
Well, you have signature like pens and right, stuff like that.
But I don't know if that was really licensing. Like I work pretty closely with those pen companies. I feel like it's more of a partnership than licensing. But yeah.
There was that job you did when you did the toilets. That was one of the biggest pieces I think I've seen you do, where it's every surface in that room. That was quite a big piece.
Yeah, I didn't make very much from that though, because I didn't know how much to ask for. After I finished that, the guy, he didn't even talk about paying me. Then I was like, I sent him a text. I'm like, yeah, can I get paid for the mural I did in the bathrooms? And he's like, yeah, send me an invoice. And I'm like, how much should I ask for that? And so I asked him for $500. They paid me $500. And then later I found out I should have asked for like $5,000. So it's just one of those things where I told you I'm not good at business. I should have had my agent. I didn't have agents back then.
But you're better now. And the next time you will ask that.
Yeah.
So yeah, Scott, I apologize for the aggression of the question, but how do you make money as an artist?
No, I think it's important to know. I don't know. You throw a bunch of stuff at the wall and see what sticks, like you do a million things. Like I sometimes show with the gallery. I sometimes sell on Instagram. I've been doing this for 30 years. So I have connections with different types of people who You apply for stuff. Sometimes you just get asked to do stuff. um, what Peter said about not knowing if you're a YouTube artist who makes YouTube artist who no, you're a YouTuber who makes art or an artist who uses YouTube. I think there's a similar thing I went through where I don't know if I'm an illustrator who makes art or an artist who illustrates. And I've come over the last decade to see that who gives a crap? It doesn't matter. Like I used to be so afraid, like, oh, I really want to be in the art world, but I want to make money illustrating. And I'm afraid that the art world will find out that I illustrate, but nobody cares. You know, like you look back in history and so many artists did that. And like everything is everything now, you know, like most of like pause, that stuff is kind of illustrating anyway, you know, and commercially licensing everything. And like everything's mashed up together now and it doesn't matter. So I don't worry so much about that. And honestly, there's such everybody wants attention somehow. And if you're getting it, like if you want to show the gallery and you're getting certain amount of attention, like Peter, you get a lot of attention. I'm sure some, if you find the right one, some galleries will want to leverage that and sell your work. And just shake your moneymaker and figure out how to like just try different stuff. I try different stuff all the time. Sometimes I know it's going to be stupid, but I want to do it anyway. Like I have this sort of series of drawing experiments where Peter, you've patronized me, thank you, a couple times, where I'll like tell me what you want and I'll draw it for you and I'll interpret what you're saying and I'll draw it in this format and whatever. And I did a ridiculous portrait of Peter once. I don't even think you asked for a portrait though, did you?
I wonder if I have it around here.
I'm going to need a picture of that sending to me to put on the screen because that sounds incredible.
I can find it somewhere. But I did one experiment was because I like to go onto airplanes and draw someone barfing on the barf bag and then put the barf bag back in the seat so that someone finds it later. And so I thought it'd be really funny to draw insulting portraits of loved ones on barf bags and then send the barf bag to someone. And guess how many patrons I got for that?
How many?
Quite a few.
0.
Really?
Can you believe it? Nobody wanted their nephew with a penis nose on a barf bag. That's something I think like I sometimes lose perspective and I think I would totally order that. That is so awesome.
Yeah.
And then, but the thing is like most people don't think that. So that's one way. Like I also get like I illustrated a book recently on prototypes for Stanford Design School. They just like the writer's like, hey, I follow this guy on Instagram. You should ask him, see if he'll illustrate a book. And I often get like, I don't know if you do this, but maybe could you think about, and I'm like, yeah, sure. I'll like, that sounds like something that sounds fun. I'll totally do that. And sometimes I do it because it'll be hard and I'll end up learning from it. And sometimes it's like good money. And sometimes I don't have anything else going on. So sure, I'll do that. Yeah. And then, I don't know, I sell work just from my studio.
Earlier, apply for stuff, and I'm curious, is that grant money? Is it what's that about?
So that changes a lot, but I know New York a little bit better than I know other places, although the world is shrinking. But I moved to New York after college in 1995, and I had to figure out how to go about trying to be an artist in New York. And there are a lot of specific things to specific places that artists that have resources for artists that some artists might not know about. For instance, the Drawing Center here was one place where we used to take slides with actual cameras before digital cameras and then submit your slides. And then you could be included in every year they have the drawing papers program. And then I got interviewed and accepted into that. And that's just one weird little thing. And that kind of snowballs into other stuff. There are NYFA, New York Foundation of the Arts. You just, every 2 years, depending on what your category is, you apply to get Now it's an $8,500 no questions asked grant that they give to tons of artists it's every year, but there's different categories every year, and they repeat every 2 years. And so you just look for specific things like that to apply for. I tend not to. There's a lot of opportunities for artists to apply to galleries and be in a group show. And I don't know if I grew out of that, but I don't want to pay $45 to be considered for a show somewhere in the middle of nowhere where you're going to frame the work, pay, $300-400 to frame the work, mail it out for another $150, return postage. Like, it's sometimes not worth it to do that. Sometimes if you're beginning and you want to build your resume, your art showing resume, then it's worth doing that. But there's a lot of opportunity like that. There's specific places online that will list opportunities for artists. NYFA has one, NYFA Resources, NYFA Resources. And it's not just in New York. It's sort of East Coast centric, but it's international. And there are opportunities for artists to apply for all kinds of stuff, not just drawing or painting, but residencies. There's tons of residencies that artists can apply for. And if you have a lifestyle such that you can take off for a month or a couple of weeks or whatever, or even free studios, you can apply for studio residencies. There's just tons of opportunities out there. You just have to look for them online and apply for them. One really important piece of advice I had I was in a studio building for 22 years. I just moved out of 2 years ago in Times Square. Peter, did you come to that studio?
Yeah.
You visited me there. And it's full of artists, and they're all professional working artists in the gallery world. And one artist I sort of glommed onto, he mentored me, I would call it, for a while. And I learned so much from watching him work and just listening to his advice. And one of those pieces of advice was, and other people say this too, is spend 80% of your time making art and 20% of your time doing business stuff. And that includes mailing stuff out to galleries. That includes getting your artist statement written. That includes getting your resume online so that when you want to apply for stuff, you can sit down at your computer and just boom, 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 boom. Your images are already cropped and organized. And so 20% of your time, one day of the week, do that stuff. And that will help further your career. Jerry Saltz has, I think, a pretty good book out right now. Do you know Jerry Saltz, the art critic, about how to live as an artist or how to be an artist? Or he's great. I mean, he's like kind of the people's art critic. I think he actually won a Pulitzer. Pulitzer, whatever. Yeah. He writes for New York Magazine, and actually his wife is my favorite critic, Roberta Smith. She writes for the New York Times. Everything she writes is so fun to read, and since I live here, I almost always see the shows that she reviews. But he wrote a book recently. He's on a book tour right now, basically giving artists advice on how to push their career along.
Wow.
Which includes selling work, going back to what your original question was.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got to sell the work in order to keep making the work. I mean, I for a long time I didn't, and I've always had jobs, but I kind of, you depending on how much work you're selling, you can kind of mix up the percentages of how much you work and how much you're selling and stuff, and making work.
I really appreciate both of you being so generous with your time. It's been fantastic talking to each of you about these random and sometimes a bit too grandiose questions, but it's been great having you have this conversation. And is there anything where people should go? Where should I send people to go and have a look at your work and support you? I should direct this to either one of you because I keep saying it and both of you are like, who goes first?
Well, I bothered by urinestyle.com, so that's one place.
Excellent.
Perfect. I think that's where I went to buy the cap.
Oh, was it?
Oh, I need to actually re-up inventory, but there's a couple things there.
Oh yeah, and you can see the cap on a skull.
Oh yeah, that's a
human skull.
I have 2 human skulls in my studio.
Oh, really?
One of them's from my dad, who's an ear, nose, and throat doctor, and he got it as a gift from medical school. And another one is his dad, my grandfather, who was a dentist, and they used that to show teeth stuff. and
Wow.
all the teeth, most of the teeth have all fallen out of it by now. But yeah, it's cool. It's real dirty from, I think, people touching it, but it's still cool looking.
Ironic, all the teeth have fallen out of the dentist. Yeah.
This is what could happen to you.
Cautionary tale.
Yes.
But yeah,
Yeah.
and your Instagram, I mean, I'll have the links in the description. So your in style and the Instagram for Scott. Is there anything else, Scott? Have you a website or Patreon or anything you'd want people to go and have a look at?
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, just I guess Teplin.com, and I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. Excellent. And then Peter, where would you like people to go and
I mean, I would say PeterDraws.com, but I need to I haven't updated it in too long. But I mean, it has links to everything, and yeah, Instagram, YouTube are my main ones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, thank you both so much for being part of the conversation. It's been great talking to both of you.
Yeah, it was a good time. Thank you.
Thanks.
Excellent.